Hey guys, Alexander Williamson here with The Secret History Living Inside of Your Aquarium. Today we're outside of the aquarium and we're going to be talking about cyanobacteria and algae. And we're going to be talking about where does it come from, how does it get into your fish tank, and what is it. It's just a quick little overview. We're not going into depth about how to get rid of it or any of that stuff, but we'll talk about that in another video. So first of all, I want to show you that I live in Seattle. It is, sorry about that, I almost dropped the camera. I live in Seattle, and it is very wet here. We have moss, we have lichen. You can see the lichen growing here. You can see slick surfaces are wet, but they also have a green substance on them. And this substance is probably an aufwuchs, like I talked about in the other videos, which is a combination, here, we'll walk over here, a combination of bacteria and plants such as moss, and also lichen, which is the lighter powdery stuff, and probably also fungi or mold of some sort. So they all live together in harmony in any wet location. They can also be dry forms of them, but wet and warm is what they really like, and wet period is what they need. So I hope this shows up on camera, but let's get the lighting right. But we have a slick of what a lot of people would call algae, if you can see it here. But it's really a blue-green bacteria. It's probably a cyanobacteria. And what cyanobacteria is it is a microorganism, a bacteria, as I said, and it is, if you look at it, it has a slimy texture similar to algae. Now this very well may be actual algae, this stuff that's stringy growing with cyanobacteria, but this stuff here, the green, it actually has a greenish blue dark evergreen look, and we're going to use this dental extractor to kind of get some of it onto a pick and end up looking at it under the microscope. So if we can, come on. So we got a little bit here on the end of the extractor, and we'll take it under the microscope and check it out. But we grow that stuff all over, so it's growing drier. I mean, this is still wet. It's Seattle. I hope you like my slippers here. We also have other bacteria, and bacteria that you may be used to that you may not even know is bacteria. And that's stuff that grows on the cracks in between your patio and in between the grout on your shower if you don't clean it soon enough. There's also bacteria that likes iron. See, we're leaching iron here from probably the rebar in the concrete. Before this was all painted over and sealed in concrete, there's a rebar under there. And there are actual bacteria that live off of iron. And so they have colonized on top of those iron drips, as well as probably calcium, which is leaching from the limestone in the actual cement itself. Underneath the the hardened cement, there's limestone powdered mixed in with cement. So you've got separate kinds of bacteria growing on that, and sometimes those are known as extremophiles. You can get green bacteria like right over here growing also, but when you have it growing off of sulfur or something like that, that's usually known as an extremophile. And so it just shows you how tenacious life is. But when we talk about cyanobacteria like this, or aufwuchs, which is a colony of bacteria and algae and or fungi and protozoa that all live together, and they've got a gel-like covering, and that gel-like covering, as you saw on the driveway, they encapsulate each other, and they use the energy from the photosynthetic bacteria, which are cyanobacteria, meaning they get their energy from the sun, and they use they also have zooplankton and other living little single-cell creatures that go out and forage food and may fix nutrients. And then they have bacteria that actually feeds off things like iron and things. So you can have up to 1,800 species living in the goo on your driveway, you know. But the same is true in your fish tank, and this stuff dries out, it gets aerosolized into the air, And these same organisms in a given household, there's somewhere between 800 and 2,000 living organisms in the air and on the surfaces, not counting viruses, not counting really small bacteria, but I'm talking about things that colonize and grow into, I mean, I guess that would count mold spores and things like that. That's where it comes from on your bread or your fruit. It's not just, it doesn't just inherently appear. It is in your environment all the time, and most of the time we don't notice it. Now up here we actually do have some algae growing where it's been wet and underwater. I don't know if you can see that, but this is white for the most part tile. I mean, it looks like this. And over here we've got a brown, black, and then we've also got a rusty red and a green algae growing. And that's just because this is Seattle. It's wet a lot here, and right now it's cold, and so this time of year for 6 months or so, this is just what we live with. So if you want to see what this stuff looks like under the microscope, join me in the next part of this video where we go inside and we'll be exploring what cyanobacteria, what algae look like. We'll get some samples out of the aquarium, and we'll get some off the driveway and things like that, and take a look and see what's similar, what's different, and if we can take apart a little bit more about them. So stay tuned. I hope you learned just a little bit, and maybe you appreciate that slime, which probably resembles some of the first life on Earth that's growing on your, in your basement, maybe in damp corners of rockeries and under things and bricks and driveways and stuff like that. But it's all part of life, and it's all part of your fish tank and the cycle of your fish tank. So it's best to know it, acknowledge it, and learn how we can use it or avoid it. Blue-green algae you usually want to avoid, whereas other algae and bacteria you absolutely need. So we're going to talk a little bit about that more, so stay tuned for the next video. Thanks guys, stay tuned.